So what if you have a Kythera and you want to put a B.O.S.S system on it? Well, the good news is we figured it out. Anthony from Anttech actually designed a drop-in harness to fit inside of a VFC spec version 2 gearbox. So for those who have been wondering, how do you have your B.O.S.S system on a Kythera, we're going to talk about it.
So if you're using a Polar Star Kythera and you want to run the B.O.S unit, soon to be available on AnttechAirsoft.com once I refine it and I'm kind of happy with it. This is just a drop-in harness. It's a switch inside of a housing that's pre-wired for you with the B.O.S cable. And this will allow you to very easily place the harness in there. You're going to route your wires. So the end that has the JST connector is just going to go out through the bottom. The other end that has the B.O.S connector on it, that's going to route through this channel in the gearbox shell. It tucks right underneath your trigger. And that sticks out of the gearbox shell just like any front wiring harness. And it'll route out the front of your gun the way it should. So it's really simple. What you have here is a switch. And this switch, when it's actually pressed, that's when it's not sending power. This switch sends power when it's released. So if we take the Kythera engine and pop that in here, right now you can see that the trigger is not pulled. You can pull it and you can reset it. What you want to do is you want to adjust the position of the switch using an Allen key. There's a grub screw back here. You can get back there and you tighten that screw. You're going to slowly tighten it until you hear it click. So I just heard the switch click. So now that it's there, if I pull this trigger just a little bit, I'm going to hear it click again. That means that the B.O.S unit's firing. In this case, the Kythera hasn't fired yet. The Kythera trigger doesn't break until I'm all the way out here. So depending on how you have your trigger tuned on your Kythera will affect the exact position you want this switch to be. This is why I made the position of it adjustable. But now that the trigger's all the way forward, I'm going to keep pushing the switch forward. I'm going to reset this again. And the idea is you don't want it so that it just starts shooting when you don't pull the trigger. And you also want it to shoot when you do pull the trigger. So that's why the position of the switch is very important. But right now I moved it up. It's being pressed. I'm going to slowly pull that Kythera trigger. Right around here, it is firing the B.O.S unit for all intents and purposes. But there's still some more slack. Still some more ways to go. So I'm going to keep tightening that screw to push that switch up. In this case, it's very close. This Kythera has no tuning done to the trigger at all. So what you have is you have a lot of slack before the trigger actually breaks. When your Kythera is set up like this, it's a little bit difficult to get it tuned to this specific switch. But when you add the grub screws that come with the Kythera unit, you can get it set up so that it actually starts much closer to where the trigger breaks. So on the Anttech KGS pre-builds, our switch just slipped out. Yep. On the Anttech KGS pre-builds, the trigger's actually tuned to where it actually starts right around here. So in this case, it actually allows me to move the switch up further. Otherwise, the way that it's set up right now, I physically can't push the switch up further. So this is why this particular product's not out yet. It is catered specifically to my pre-builds. I do have to make some tweaks to it so that if you do run your Kythera like this, it's not going to be an issue for you. So it's just playing around with different switches. But essentially when the product's done, completely done, it will be as simple as dropping it in, routing the wires, adjusting that grub screw, and just testing your trigger to make sure that the B.O.S. unit fires when you pull the trigger. You can play with it the way that it is now, but you have to pull the trigger pretty fast because, as you can see, the switch is clicking right here. So the B.O.S. unit can fire before the actual gun fires.